La diffusion vient de démarrer. Tous les participants sont en mode écoute seul.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. My name is Karine Bowen from the Global Customer Reference Program at Alcatel-Lucent Enterprise, and I'd like to welcome you to this live reference exchange. We're delighted and honored today to welcome our distinguished guest from the United States, Nick Zepp, who is Network Systems Manager at State College Area School District, and Robert Goff, who is Infrastructure Team Lead at Christina School District. Hi, Nick and Bob.
Hello and good morning.
Good morning.
Our moderator today will be Robert Hemrick. Rob is our Director of North America Business Development at Alcatel-Lucent Enterprise. And in the session, we will discuss what benefits Nick and Bob identified from their unified access strategy. Before we move on, here are some practical information for this exchange. This roundtable will last around 20 minutes, and we will leave another 20-minute time for a Q&A session. At any time, you can submit your questions by typing them on the questions pane. So let us get started. Rob, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Corinne. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon to all. This is Rob Hemrick, and I wanted to introduce to you the solution that we're going to be talking about today. And it's a solution that here at Alcatel-Lucent Enterprise we call Unified Access. And I think what's important to understand about Unified Access is that it really addresses the needs of two audiences. On the one hand, you have your user community who benefits, and on the other hand, you have your IT community who benefits. From a user perspective, they get a unified experience, regardless of application or device, across the wired and wireless network. And from an IT perspective, you get to manage the network as one network, both wired and wireless. This improves policy enhancements and security for all of your users. And of course, the Unified Access solution is based on Alcatel-Lucent Enterprise's products, the OmniSwitch and the OmniAccess wireless portfolio. But with that, we're going to move now to our roundtable with Bob Goff and Nick Zepp. And my first question, and I'll start with you, Bob, is I want to understand what a day in the life looks for you today as an IT professional, and how has it changed over the last, say, 5 or 10 years?
Okay, well, over the last, let's go 10 years. That's where we saw the most dramatic change, obviously. So 10 years ago, a typical day for us would be installing, say, wireless in one of our buildings. We would have a request for wireless. We would have went out with a single type access point that would have its own power supply, and you would plug it directly into the network, and we would set up a SID for that user. And those worked okay, but the problem with those at the time were, if we were to set up another one of those in another room with the same SID, you would have to reconnect to the next one. They didn't have that continuous connection at the time. They didn't have mesh, wireless networks and all of those things. In our particular environment, we had a very large staff layoff, and we were reduced to a small amount of people, so we needed to start learning how to centrally manage things, and that's where Alcatel came in. So back then, where I would have sent a team of people out to take care of every single problem, that doesn't exist today. We have to be able to take care of those problems in-house from our desk most of the time. Alcatel, between the Omni switches, allowing us to do remote connections, allowing us to do multitasking, or multicasting, I'm sorry, for imaging and things like that, have made it so a lot of the work we do today actually happens from our desk. And it's cut down the travel dramatically. And it's actually improved performance and overall efficiency.
Right. So as your users have become more mobile, your staff have become less so. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. Well, how about the same question to you, Nick, in terms of what your day-to-day workday looks like and how it's changed over the last 5 to 10 years?
Sure. I think 10 years ago, much like Bob, we were working towards a ubiquitous wireless network. However, we were doing that with fat access points, individually managed access points. So what we quickly found was when you start to build that ubiquitous wireless network where you're providing coverage, complete coverage to a building, the network just wasn't able to handle that. And we spent more time troubleshooting problems, and we didn't have enough time to move forward in our deployment. So about 5 years ago now, we looked at the Alcatel wireless solution, and that has been very successful for us. We installed it in our first building and had no problems. And now we have that installed to the point where we have wireless coverage in every educational space within our district. That has given our users a great user experience, because it doesn't matter whether they're wired, wireless, or even mobile outside the district. They can access district resources using the network that we're providing.
Right. And how big is that district that you're talking about, Nick?
We have 14 campuses and right around 10,000 users.
Wow. And Bob, is that comparable to what you have at Christina School District?
A little more. We have 40 locations and one campus consisting of about 5 buildings with about 20,000 users and 24,000 nodes.
Wow. And so they're all using that ubiquitous wireless network that you've installed now. That's pretty impressive.
2,500 access points.
Okay. All right. Well, let's move on to the next question here. Both of you have recently, made some investments in your network infrastructure, and let's start with you, Nick. What was the reason you decided it was time to invest in your network? Was it because of new expectations from your user community? Were there new requirements from regulators, or maybe there was a new application that was coming online that dictated the need?
Sure, and I think that I think it's fair to say that the compelling event would have been a combination of those 3 items as well as some other things. In the state of Pennsylvania, we're doing online testing for benchmark assessments and things. Just general internet traffic, we're seeing an upward trend, and that's continuing. So we're sort of trying to stay ahead of the curve on students being able to access the internet, as well as we're seeing a lot of BYOD students, students who are more comfortable with a device that they already own. So they're bringing that device on, and we're also deploying one-to-one. So the additional nodes on the network are really causing us to look at our capacity and figure out how we can handle all of the application demands from the additional nodes that we're putting on the network.
So let me ask you a follow-up question there, Nick. You used 2 terms here, and because we have a global audience, I want to make sure everyone understands what they mean. First of all, you said one-to-one. Can you explain what that means to the audience, please? Yeah.
Students are receiving a device as part of their education in our school district. So they have access. They have 24/7 access, and in some cases, they can take that device home as well. That way, they have 24/7, 365 access to that technology, so that they can engage in learning at any point.
Right, and that's a school-issued device, then, is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
And you also talked about online testing. What kind of testing and how taxing is that to your network?
Well, the state has implemented this online testing application, which connects back to data centers at the state, and it pulls all the questions, all the answers, images, videos, you name it, they've included it, and requires roughly, they estimate about 1 megabit per student per session. The way the state has implemented those tests, we have to test all students in a building at one particular time. So if you figure we have 4,000 students on one particular campus, that's a lot of bandwidth requirements for those students to all complete the test in that time frame.
Right.
And obviously, it's a time test, so if the connection drops, that takes away from the time the student has to complete the assessment.
Wow. So it's really a critical asset to you.
Yes.
So Bob, let me ask you the same question. You know, you also undertook an investment in your school district's network. Can you tell the audience a little bit about, you know, why now? Why didn't you just wait?
Well, I want to echo some of the statements that Nick said. We also are bound by the state testing, regulations. That's pretty much a countrywide requirement at this point, or will be at some point. So we had to bring our network up to speed to be able to test, 16,000 students on any given day. But at the same time, one of the things we started noticing, so you go back 5 years ago, all of our buildings would use programs, and in education we use a ton of programs. And a lot of those programs we used to house, in buildings. So we would put a server in a building. If they were using Discovery Education or Plato or something like that involved in education, we would put the server in the building, install the application on the PC, and they would have a direct link to the server. One of the trends we're seeing is all of those programs are moving to hosted services now. So our internet traffic has seen almost a 10, 20-fold increase. So we had to start building the network toward that. And then, of course, with the invention of the iPad, that didn't help either.
Yeah, so that's a very commonly used device in your school district then, Bob?
Absolutely. We don't do a one-to-one initiative, as I was saying, but one of the things we have seen is 5 years ago, our wireless devices probably numbered about, I don't know, maybe 7 or 800, whereas now we have about 3,000 wireless devices.
Connected at any one time?
Yes, on a daily basis, about 2,650 connected at one time.
Wow. That's some serious wireless traffic you're talking about. A good reason to invest then.
Absolutely, yes.
All right. Well, let's move on to the next question then. Some great insights you're providing, guys. Okay, so you invested in your network, but surely you had some barriers you needed to overcome. Maybe funding was a challenge, or maybe there was a staff gap, either staff resisting the change, or your staff not being trained to cope with the change, and then of course there's always local conditions. And maybe I'll start with you, Bob. But what's your take? What kind of barriers did you have to overcome to get a successful project underway?
Well, I can tell you all three of these areas affect us. Staffing is one, especially in education, where things don't change much. You have people that have been using the same methods or methodologies for 20 years. So when you come to them and say you want to change things, that doesn't go over very well. And local conditions can tend to be a lot of it, and funding as well, particularly in my state of Delaware, where when we want to fund large projects, we have to go to the public and ask them for money, and they vote on it. Nick's situation, he can explain that, is a little different, but we have to vote on those things. And it doesn't always come across. They don't always see the ideas that we have. Our vision is a little different from theirs at times. So, and that's where actually Alcatel has always been very good with us. They've always come around with some amazing quotes for us.
Okay, great. So Nick, what about you? Did you have any of these issues to overcome in the building out of your modern network?
Well, our story is maybe a little bit different than Bob's. We had a very supportive board. They came to us and said that they want to enable anytime, anywhere learning, which means essentially that each student has access to a device to enable them to learn at any point in their day, whether that's at home or in school. So we looked at ways to accomplish that. Unfortunately, that occurred. The economy here in the U.S. has been a little difficult recently, and that occurred sort of at the start of the economic downturn. So there was no more money or staffing to go along with that request. It was just it was an idea that, hey, we want to enable anytime, anywhere access. So what we had to do was look at how we can support that request without additional resources or with very strategically placed resources. The centralized management for the wireless and the wired network has been key to this because we have not increased our network staff at all, and we've probably tripled the number of devices on our network. You know, support staffing is always a concern. I mentioned that we didn't increase our network staff. However, you increase the number of devices, you need additional support for that, and that's a challenge. So we've had to get a little bit creative with how we support those devices. But the one sort of unforeseen thing that we have had to overcome was, as people have these devices, students are pretty innovative, and they find new and exciting ways to use devices once they have access to them. And some of those additional desires or needs have proven to be a challenge, sometimes in bandwidth concerns, other times in access concerns or what have you. But you know, that's also been a challenge that we've seen, is students find new and interesting ways to use existing devices.
Mm-hmm. Now, you know, Nick, your comment reminded me of a question I didn't ask earlier, and I'm going to start with Bob, because you also touched on this, Bob, you know, with respect to centralized management being so critical. Can you just, both of you, let the audience know how many staff you have to manage the number of users that you have? Bob?
Okay. Well, I kind of mentioned earlier, we have 40 locations.
Yeah.
These are spread over an area approximately 48 square miles. We have 24,000 nodes, about 20,000 support users with various little buildings and projects all over the place. And my entire networking staff is 2 engineers, and then I have 3 desktop support people.
So 5 people in total.
Correct.
And how about you, Nick?
Well, we are, geographically, we are spread across about 150 square miles. As I mentioned before, we have about 10,000 users on our network, and we have about that number of nodes as well. We are mostly one-to-one. We have 1 network technician, 2 server administrators, and 6 user support technicians within our district.
Wow. Yeah. So I can really understand how centralized management is absolutely critical to succeeding to support a network of that size, that complexity, and that many individual sites. That's impressive. Let's talk about this here. I want to understand, you know, starting with you, Nick, on the impact of the network on learning. So, you know, students clearly are getting a benefit. Educators, I assume, are getting a benefit, and maybe the administration of your school district is also seeing benefits from it. Are you able to comment on that?
Yeah, I think each individual user community within our district is certainly benefiting from it. You know, we have an online student information system. Administrators have access to student schedules, demographic information, and things like that on their cell phones or anywhere that they need it. And that's provided through our ubiquitous Wi-Fi network. Educators are able to innovate in the classroom, come up with new assignments, and streamline their workflows. And students, you know, students are really engaged by technology, and it's a way to meet the student at their interest. But from our standpoint, as far as the network's impact on learning, my goal is to make the network transparent to the user so that they don't even realize it's there. And we've done that really by unifying our wired and wireless networks so that it doesn't matter where the user is, what building or campus they're on, even if they're at home, they have access to the same resources, and we can do that securely. And the result of that is we don't hear about it unless there's a problem. Users don't tend to call the help desk about things that they're happy with. So, you know, that's sort of my metric is if I'm not hearing about it, then there's not a problem.
Right.
And we've been very successful with that model.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So I've said this myself before. You know, the best possible network is an invisible network, and you called it transparent, but I think it's the same idea. How about you, Bob? How have you seen, you know, the network that you've built for the district impact learning?
Well, as I said earlier, we moved ourselves, or we're moving ourselves more into a portal type world, where we're going back almost to the dummy type stations we had, you know, from the 80s and 90s, where you had a keyboard and a monitor. Well, we've done that same exact thing. Everything's becoming hosted, and everything's becoming, you know, cloud-based. But what that does is it gives that, as Nick had said earlier, anytime, anywhere learning. It really takes the anywhere learning anywhere. So for administrators, we'll say, between their MyDocs, which is cloud-based, and they have their 24/7 email, and they have SharePoint where they put all their collaborative work and all those things, we're able to keep the network running 24/7, and we're able to cloud and portal all of those things. So no matter where they are, they can be in Dubai on vacation and they can still work, which I'm sure doesn't thrill them, but they can. As far as students go, we are moving into that area where students are going to be having the BYOD type atmosphere. So students will be able to bring whatever device they have. It doesn't matter if it's a phone, an iPad, a laptop, anywhere. And they'll be able to have that continuous learning experience no matter what they're doing or where they are. And the educators as well. With the educators, we have collaborative workshops we can do. We also have distance learning labs, which is amazing stuff, where educators can work either between schools. You can have shared classrooms between schools or other parts around the country. We did interviews this year for some positions, for some learning, for some language classes, and we interviewed the people using Skype right from our building here. They didn't have to travel from Spain, Japan, and China, and all those places. So
and these were international positions, I think you told me earlier, right, Bob?
Correct. Yes. Yes. Yeah. And having reliability is what allowed all of that.
Wow. Yeah, so your network is really transcending even national borders now, because you're using it to bring in those remote educators from other parts of the world.
Absolutely.
Amazing. Okay. Now here's an interesting question, and I think I'll start with you on this one, Bob. We talked about this one earlier about securing your network. I think from an education perspective, it can be a very challenging environment to secure your network, is it not?
It can be, because as administrators, and as Nick can tell you, we have a very large network, very small staff. We don't have all day to track down people trying to crack into the network or do things that are nefarious. But the students, they have all day, and there's thousands of them out there with plenty of time to try to access things they shouldn't. And occasionally a staff member who tries to get around the network so he can go to YouTube and see things that he shouldn't be seeing. And so one of the things that we leveraged this past year with Alcatel's help, actually, was a program called Cyber Gatekeeper. And it attaches to our Alcatel network, and it puts up it's a client-based product and hardware, and it's the front door. You get in, you become segregated from the network until you meet a certain criteria, and when you've met that criteria, you're allowed onto the network under certain security credentials. And you can set those credentials at various levels: students, staff, administrators, network, things of such like that. So that has really been a lifesaver for us, because we also get that will send us reports anytime someone has done something that is outside of the scope of what they should be doing. And at that point, we can then decide what we need to do. We can secure them off the network, and this was in seconds we can do this. We can lock their machines and anything to that area. So
that's pretty powerful. Now, I think you even mentioned you have a scoreboard, don't you, Bob?
We do. I have a scoreboard outside. Yes, that's funny you say that. I had a scoreboard outside my office that has my name and the students, and periodically it'll say Bob 1, students 0, or Bob 0, students 2.
And you're hoping to keep the score in your favor, I suppose, right?
It's sitting around Bob 10, student 0 right now, so we've been doing pretty good.
A good season for you, a good
Yes,
season.
yes. Okay.
How about you, Nick? I think you have some additional challenges in your environment, correct?
Yeah. In my environment, we offer, as part of our career and technical program, we offer an ethical hacking course where students learn to become network administrators and learn to become security administrators. And they do that by learning about the attacks in order to figure out how to defend themselves against those attacks. It's a very valuable program for the students. However, it puts some very sophisticated attacks on the inside of my network, because those students, they are students, and they will occasionally stray from working on the test network to trying to get into something on the production network. And we've really done a pretty good job, I think. I haven't kept a scoreboard, but we've implemented policies that are user-based policies. So the user authenticates and joins the network, and from that point in time, we apply policies based on who that user is. So whether that's ACLs or assigning them to a particular VLAN, or we accomplish that in a number of different methods throughout the network. But it's really all focused on the user. So an administrator has access to our grading system, but students really are in a separate network and they don't have access to that because there's no conceivable reason for them to need access to that.
Right, right. Yeah, the concept that Alcatel-Lucent Enterprise has been promoting is one called user network profile, where the user's own credentials are used to identify them and then to provide that kind of fine-grained policy control that you're talking about, Nick. So many different ways to accomplish it, and user network profile being another one. All right, let's move on to the next question. Oh, I'm sorry, Nick, did you want to add something there?
No, that's...
All right, so in terms of, so you've built your network and hopefully it's transparent and invisible, but because you've built this very reliable, robust, and enabling anywhere learning, are there new or unexpected uses of the network that you're seeing by students or teachers? And I'll start with you, Nick, on that one.
Sure. Well, I've already mentioned state testing, and that provides a significant amount of traffic that's very high priority traffic on our network. We've also, some of the interesting projects that we've seen teachers engage in, one is called flipped classrooms. So the teacher will record themselves in a video giving the lecture that would typically in a traditional classroom be given during the school day. And then when the students are at home, their homework is to watch the lecture. When they come back into school, what would typically traditionally be done as homework is then done in the classroom with the teacher, so that if the students are having trouble or struggling or have a question, they really have the content area expert right there in front of them to answer that question and help them gain a better understanding of the knowledge. That video traffic, we've had to provide space and a method to host and stream those videos so that teachers can produce a 20-minute lecture and assign it to their students to stream it from home. And that's been a bit of an unexpected challenge, although we were able to overcome it pretty easily. In addition, we have a world language teacher who, if for the purpose of this conversation, let's assume that the class is learning French. They will find a teacher who is teaching English in France and do video chats with the students so that they can practice with one another their language skills. That's also a very on-demand type traffic, and with any video chat type traffic, there's two-way audio and two-way video associated with it. But we're able to handle that on our network and our internet connections without any issues.
Yeah, that's pretty fantastic. Again, an example of your network, expanding your school's perimeter outside, your district and even outside the country. That's pretty remarkable. How about you, Bob? Have you seen some unexpected uses of the network that you've built?
I have. We have one in particular that doesn't necessarily focus around students or teachers, but more from an administrative standpoint. And that was, we have a person in our district who is a climate control administrator. So he is responsible for, if there's an incident within a school, he would be the one that would go to the school, kind of survey the incident. If it's, look at the camera system, see if there's anything on the camera system that may have picked up the particular incident. Well, he was traveling to every single school for this. So what we did was we set up a thing in his office where he can, so if, again, 40 buildings, and every single one has a camera system, and these camera systems are all connected to the network. We set it up so that from his desktop, he can see every single camera system in every single building in our district and pull the data as he needs it. So this is live video. And of course, then he's pulling the archive video, which can be rather, 1 to 2 gigs sometimes per incident. And not only did it cut down on his travel time, but it also, again, it centralized that management piece for him.
Yeah, and I guess it provided a more secure and safe environment for everybody as a result, right?
Absolutely. And it also increased the recovery time and the investigation of those particular instances.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, because you live in an environment where, weather can wreak havoc on your district, right?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, okay. Well, be it snow or be it flooding, it's never a dull moment where you are.
Hey, snow and flooding, yes.
Right. Okay. Well, I have one final question for both of you, and Bob, I'll start with you. What do you think the future is going to hold, and what kind of technology is the class of 2030 going to be using?
Well, hopefully I'll be retired and I won't be in those classes, but obviously we're moving toward a more mobile future. We're going to see probably the advent of, or we're probably going to see the desktops go away completely, I would think, or at least I would hope by 2030. Many companies are already working on technologies where your phone will literally become your entire computer in the future. You will walk in, you will have a Bluetooth connection to a monitor. The minute you walk within a certain proximity, your entire phone transfers to that monitor, and you can simply use it. And when you leave, we saw the same thing with students and with teachers as well. Teachers will have some type of smartboard type device. They'll walk into the classroom, and everything will immediately transfer to the smartboard. Data will be instantly transferable, I would like to think. I would like to think that teachers would be able to have classroom assignments and be able to project those to all the devices in the classroom at one time, as opposed to using email or SharePoint or Dropbox or things of that nature. But definitely a more mobile world. Wireless is, Verizon themselves want to get out of the landline business. They want to get into more, they want to focus everything on wireless because they see that as the future.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
What about you, Nick? What do you see in your crystal ball? Well, I think my vision is a little bit different than what Bob had shared. I see the future of education really moving to more of an on-demand learning style. I think that's going to involve the telecommute mentality, and I think technology is going to be the backbone to that. I think that's going to enable a year-round education. It's going to allow students to learn at their pace, and it's going to increase the availability for individualized or differentiated education. I think the brick-and-mortar schools then become tangible learning centers, really. Maker spaces and areas where students can engage in specialized activities or get individualized support one-on-one from the teacher of the class. More of a meeting and facilitation space.
Right.
Ultimately, I think it ends up being less about students using technology to gather info and more about using technology to demonstrate the proficiency and understanding of the topics that they're learning.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense to me, Nick, what you're saying. I mean, we're already starting to see that at the higher education level with the the emergence of MOOCs and that kind of thing. So it's an interesting perspective. Well, gents, I thank you for sharing your insights on those questions. We'll now open the floor to questions from our audience, and you're welcome, of course, to submit your questions using the Q&A tool that you have at your disposal. I see we have a few already, right, Corinne?
Yes, we have one question. The first one is what device is issued to all students? And this is especially for Nick.
Yeah, I think, Nick, when you were talking about your one-to-one initiative, the question came in about what specific devices are being issued to the students.
Sure. In the kindergarten through second grade levels, we're issuing tablet devices. It's a mix of iPads and we're looking at Android tablets, but they're really tablet devices in general. From third grade through fifth grade, currently, we have a shared Apple laptop cart. What we found with those was the Mac platform is great for creating videos and things like that. There's a lot less overhead associated with it. And then from 5th through 12th grade, we are one-to-one with Chromebooks. So we're providing every student, grades 5 through 12, a Chromebook. We're working towards a model where each student from 3 through 12 will have a Chromebook. But financially, we had to balance those capital purchases over a number of years in order to make it feasible.
Right. Okay, great. I think that answers the question. Maybe, Bob, from your side, you don't have a one-to-one initiative, but do you have a sense of what kind of devices the students are using in your district?
Absolutely. We don't have a one-to-one initiative yet. We have done extensive studying on one-to-ones, and ours was more focused around the lower grades, of course, as well. We have a school in our district that is 2 to 5, so we try to get the students as early as possible. And we have those students already using iPads, and that has been a phenomenal success with them. When you start moving into the K devices, so K to, as Nick was saying, right on the K to 3, same exact thing. They're using different types of devices, Kindles, things of that nature. And then we went with laptops for the higher grades. For those so we have spotted one-to-ones. We just don't have an entire district one-to-one yet. And of course, it all focuses around finance as usual. And and for those devices, we went with Lenovo's. So the laptops.
Okay. All right. So a real variety of devices in your environment.
We wanted to use different devices because that's what the students are going to be using once they leave here. They're going to go into a world where every device is going to be different no matter where they are. So we didn't want to. We wanted to acclimate them with all those things.
Yeah, they have to be familiar with multiple kinds of technology. It makes perfect sense to me. Okay, Corinne, I think we've answered that one. What's next?
Yeah, so we have another one from Pakistan, which is how important will be the role of SDN in our future network?
So software-defined networking. I don't know, Bob, let's throw that one at you first. Have you spent any time thinking about how software-defined networking, or SDN, will impact the way you deliver applications in the future?
To be honest with you, no, we have not. Mm-hmm. In Delaware, the problem with us is we are a child domain of the state of Delaware. So everything we do is a portal or funnel to the main hubs in Delaware. Most likely, if Delaware was to move in that direction, we would obviously move in that direction as well. But it's not something we've really looked into at this point.
Right. How about you, Nick?
We've done a little bit of investigation around it, and I think ultimately the ability to tailor the network for the software that's being used, even on a particular day, is going to be a very powerful thing. For instance, if we were able to dedicate bandwidth to the state testing and reduce traffic to YouTube, which we can do somewhat now, but the ability to really have finer grain control over that would be very helpful.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I can comment a little bit about, the industry at large. I mean, I see a lot of interest in software-defined networking and the type of control it can bring. And, our product team has felt the same way, given that the OmniSwitch and OmniAccess portfolio all support the necessary protocols, OpenFlow, to support SDN. But as yet, we haven't seen, massive uptake, of that capability quite yet. But I think it's coming. I have a question here that's come in, and I would be remiss in not asking it. And we'll start with you, Nick. Why did you pick Alcatel-Lucent Enterprise as your technology provider? What were the compelling reasons for that?
Well, from a technology standpoint, we're working with Alcatel-Lucent on voice, data, and wireless. Part of the reason that we've been with Alcatel and chosen them as a consistent technology provider for us is the integration between the products. One of the other advantages is it also integrates with other products. Alcatel doesn't just work with proprietary protocols, they also support other open protocols, and that's been very helpful for us.
Great. How about you, Bob? Why have you chosen to work with Alcatel-Lucent Enterprise?
Well, the Christina School District, again, as I mentioned, is a child domain of Delaware. Delaware manages all the networks in the state of Delaware with the exception of one, and that is the Christina School District. We manage our own network, every switch, 260 Alcatel switches as of current. And several years ago, about 15 years ago, the state was on 3Com. And we were looking to move into something a little more robust, something that could handle the foreseeable changes that were happening. And the state wasn't ready to move on those things. So we broke off and we started buying our own. We looked at several companies. We looked at Hewlett-Packard at the time, and we looked at Cisco. And I would be lying if I didn't say cost point was one of the reasons that we moved toward Alcatel. But at the same time, we found that our people already had some knowledge in Cisco, and we found that the language wasn't that far off. It was very easy. We thought the integration was exceptional. You guys had stacking and all of those technologies, link aggregation, all of those things, to be able to do the multitasking with imaging and all of those. That's everything we were looking for at the time. And it's been exceptional for us. It's worked out very well.
Well, that's great to hear. I'm happy to hear it. Okay, Corinne, any other questions coming from you?
Yes, how important is that you as K-12 IT person get involved and familiar with curriculum and teaching methods?
Well, let's start with you on that one, Bob. How important is it for you to understand the curriculum and what's being taught in the classroom?
Well, it's a good question. It's a great question, actually, because one of the things that I've always tried to stress here is that we are here to support education. We are not here to dictate policy. We are not here to shove the ideas of what I believe a network should look like. So I want to know the customer we're working for, and I want to understand their ideas. So I can better support them when I understand what it is they want. So when people come to us and they want something, I don't tell them no. I don't say, well, you can't have that. I would say, you know what, in our experience, that's not really going to work in the environment for what we currently have, but I'm more than willing to sit down with you and discuss an option that would work or a viable product that you can use. And the better way to do that is to understand that educational side. So I've taken a very in-depth approach toward the educational side. I go to all the board meetings. I'm on many committees, and I've always tried to integrate myself into that side of the educational business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you have to know your customer ultimately.
Absolutely.
How about you, Nick?
I think my experience is very similar to Bob's. We are heavily involved in the curriculum design and planning processes. We work hand in hand with our curriculum staff. As I said, my goal is to have the technology be transparent. So part of that is that I don't want the technology to appear to be an afterthought. We don't want people using technology just because it's technology. We want that to be integrated into the curriculum. And I think it's imperative that we're working regularly with not just the curriculum staff, but also the administrative staff. We work heavily with the principals and district administration to ensure that we have a consistent vision and we're moving with all of our arrows pointed in the right direction. And, as Bob shared, it's not just technology for technology's sake. We're here to, we need to find solutions, and the only way to do that is to work with those stakeholders.
Right, right. I mean, yeah, I mean, given what you folks have both told me, you don't have unlimited budgets. You can't really afford to make technology mistakes or to, have shelfware that doesn't get deployed and heavily used in your district. So it makes sense. Corinne, any other questions?
Yes, so we have about security. So there is one saying, you talked about cybersecurity, but have you linked IT services to your physical security procedures? And there is, for an example, like stopping social media and wireless access during a lockdown.
Yeah, so I think it's a question, we'll start with you, Nick, about the relationship between physical security, so building access and room access, and IT security. So if you have an episode, an event of some kind where you need to secure your building, is there any kind of link between that process and the IT systems that support that site?
As far as a direct link, no, there's not. However, procedurally, we have identified that depending on what the incident is, we're able to remove social media access or anything like that. Our staff is all part of the events team, so that if an incident were to occur in our buildings, we're part of that team, and we're making those decisions as a team. And if we need to restrict social media access or something like that, we have methods to do so.
Okay, yeah, because you want to dedicate your resources to the most critical communications at that point in time, I guess. Absolutely,
and the one thing that we found is that no two incidents are ever the same. Mm-hmm. So creating that hard, fast rule that as soon as something happens, we turn off Facebook, just doesn't work for every incident. So we're looking at really being dynamic in how we handle that.
Okay. How about you, Bob? Have you taken any steps to making links between physical security and IT security?
We have. Some of the things we've done are similar to Nick. We can do remote isolation of devices once we recognize a problem. Almost all the staff members are forensic certified, along with, they've all taken HIPAA, FLIPA, and all those federal required programs, and a lot of them have taken classes with Homeland Security for building intrusion, things like that. Mm-hmm. Also, we have mag locks on all their doors in every building that can be remotely closed and locked from the centralized point here in my building, and that's handled by a security person in our facilities department. Along with, like I was saying before, we have the access camera systems and things of that nature.
Right. Yeah, I mean, there's a very strong link. I mean, being able to control, locks from a central location is a pretty clear link between, your IT infrastructure and physical security. That's an impressive capability there. Corinne, do we have any further questions?
Yes, one last question. Do you see a difference in the use of and adoption of technology between more senior educators and those just recently joining the profession?
Yeah, so Bob, the more senior staff and the staff that are just starting their careers, do you see big differences in the way they use technology today?
Oh, absolutely. So when you take a senior staff member who's been in education for 20 to 40 years, he's still...
Bob, I think we lost you. Let's switch over to Nick for that question. Nick, maybe we'll get Bob back, but why don't you go ahead, Nick?
Sure, yeah. I think I agree with what Bob was starting with there. Certainly more senior educators have experience in the classroom, and they have had success in educating students with methods that didn't involve technology. The rate of adoption is certainly higher for technology with teachers who are newer to the profession because they've grown up with it. It's always been a part of their lives. And I mentioned earlier about implementing technology for technology's sake. My feeling or my sense is that many of the educators who have been in the profession for a long time don't see the value in adding technology to their portfolio because they've had success without technology.
Right. We've always done it this way, right?
Right. And that rate of adoption varies. Certainly there are some more senior educators that are very excited to pick up new technologies and try new things. And there's also some newer educators that are more fearful of the technology because what if something goes wrong? It really it varies, but I think by and large, there is an adoption gap.
Okay. Let's see if Bob's made his way back. Bob, did you want to comment on this question? No, I think we've unfortunately lost Bob. That's too bad. But I think we're almost at the end. Am I right, Corinne? Are there any other questions?
Yes. That's it.
Okay, very good. Whoops. So I want to thank very much our two panelists today, Bob Goff from Christina School District, Nick Zepp from State College Area School District. Thank you so much for sharing your insights today. And to our audience, I'd like to invite you to learn more about State College Area School District and Christina School District. The websites of those two institutions is shown here on the screen right now. And to learn more about Alcatel-Lucent Enterprises' solution for unified access, bringing together the wired and wireless networks, you can go visit bit.ly/unified-access if you want to learn more. I think with that, Corinne, I don't think I have anything more to say other than to thank you for putting this all together.
And thank you for facilitating this exchange. And thanks again to Nick and Bob, who wonderfully shared their experience. Also thanks to the audience. And for any additional question that you may have after the call, you'll receive a follow-up email, which will give you a link to our website. So you will have access to a contact section and information about Alcatel-Lucent Enterprise offer, and also details about our panelists. So do not hesitate to contact us, ask further questions. We'll be more than happy to come back to you individually. Well, I hope you found this call valuable, and I wish you a great rest of the day or the night for those who are in APAC. And on behalf of Alcatel-Lucent Enterprise, I'd like to warmly thank all of you for joining. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
I apologize for that. I was kicked off the network. We had a bit of a power outage.
Well, thank you, Bob, and thank you, Nick.
I was in mid-sentence and the lights went out.
Thank you very much.
All right. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.